This reminds me of my first experience in radio. It was back in the early 80s.
People with disability and mental health.
There's always controversy with us.
The mysteries of the mind and consciousness.
And we might get to the bottom of something, or we might start something new.
We're going to run the gamut and we're going to have a good time.
Waking Braves. No, not Waking Braves. We're Breaking Waves.
Breaking waves?
Breaking waves.
Breaking waves!
Hello, Riley.
Hello, John.
We're back. We're back in the hot seat.
With another episode of Breaking Waves.
Yes, the show for the neurologically divergent.
And today we're bringing you an episode on the topic of patience.
Patience. The game Patience?
The word patience. But there is a game. You go in for cards much, John?
I can remember my mum playing Patience.
I've been playing poker recently and I've been quite good at it. It turns out I can be hard to read sometimes.
Yeah, poker, well, that's all about reading the other player and bluffing more than anything else. And also the ability to calculate the odds. Life is actually a card game. And getting a good result most of the time is about the odds, playing the odds.
Would you say that patience is a necessary component of playing the game of life right?
Well, it's certainly called a virtue, isn't it?
That's right, and I hadn't actually heard of the 7 virtues until we started doing
no,
research for
Sunday
this show.
school.
Well, we had scripture, but it was pretty dubious. But yes, it's interesting that the 7 deadly sins, in which the virtues are positioned in opposition, seem to get a lot more press than the virtues. They say that, negativity sells more.
Now, what denomination was this? Catholic or Protestant?
I did Catholic scripture.
They're pretty focused on the sins and virtues, the Catholics, so it's a wonder that they didn't have that front and centre on the chalkboard.
Well, the level of actual education was quite lacking in those classes because it was just like old people volunteering to do it. Not to disparage old people, but the...
Sounds like childcare during the church service.
Like, there was one scripture teacher who would just, get us to colour in pictures while he'd, tell us stories about getting into fights and stuff when he was a kid, and it was just a bit of a lark, really.
Well, I didn't have to go. Oddly enough, because I was the son of the minister, I always assumed that I was getting my scripture classes at home, so I didn't have to go to Sunday school.
You're a lucky man. So, the virtue that is in opposition, rather the vice or the sin that is in opposition to patience, is wrath, which is interesting. Perhaps wrath is what one could arrive at when their patience is finally worn thin, and then all that build-up of tension is just like...
Where'd you get that from? Wrath is the opposite of patience.
I'm just looking at Wikipedia.
Wikipedia.
Yeah.
Right.
What did you have?
Well,
something
the wrath
different?
of God, that's, or the wrath of someone. If you have to suffer the wrath of somebody, basically you have to suffer the
rage.
It's usually associated with rage or anger, and it's usually some kind of reactive reaction to something.
Yeah.
But why it would be put forward as the opposite to patience, I'm not quite sure.
Well, everything else seems to make sense in terms of their oppositions, like chastity and lust, faith and idolatry, sobriety and indulgence, humility and pride. So there must be some logic to it. And perhaps this quote could shed some light. This is a piece of writing by John Dryden from 1681. And have you ever heard this quote before, John? Beware the fury of a patient man.
No, but it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, it's a reminder that someone who is usually patient can become intense when pushed too far.
Yes, a patient person is not necessarily a person that is inactive or someone who doesn't have the ability or the desire to take action. That would be the negative side of patience, and we'll get to that in a while because there are a few other negative sides to it. But as far as it being a virtue, it requires a level of equanimity, which is the control of feelings, not being a ping pong ball for your emotions.
That's right, because as you were saying, the cause of impatience can be that emotional reactivity and
Impulses.
yes.
Yes, impulses to act. And where do these impulses come from? Quite often they're emotionally based. Fear, anger, or, some kind of desire, emotion-based desire. Not always. Sometimes there might be a thought behind it. It suggests a level of stoicism. Kind of suggests the ability to persevere and put up with
Whatever life throws at you.
in certain situations.
So it's interesting to note within the Latin origin, they connect the word suffering. And this perhaps ties into the idea of a patient seeing a doctor and there being presumably an attendant amount of suffering. That's why they're seeking out the medical help. And then you were pointing out as well the necessity to have to wait until seeing the doctor. So there's a patient aspect for the patient. I always try to bring a good book if I'm waiting in a hospital waiting room.
Well, so there's a word that's the same word that's not the same word. It's actually it's pronounced the same way. A patient, patience, patient. Patients are more than one patient in a hospital, but patience is something that an individual can do. But it sounds like the same word, but has different meaning, and it's spelt differently, fortunately. Patience is spelt with a T, and yes, patients have to be patient, don't they? Because they're usually... now, I think the word's actually only used with sick people in relation to doctors. Are you ever a patient if you're not seeing a doctor? Not really.
I don't think so.
So, yeah, it's really all about doctoring and waiting for that doctor to make you better.
And that covers, of course, different types of doctors as well. Not the university doctorate kinds, but everything from the dentists to the psychiatrists and that kind of field.
Yeah, if you got faith in them, you'll manifest some patience in regards to an outcome of whatever their treatment is.
I suppose a degree of patience is required on the part of a doctor as well, or especially someone like a psychiatrist having to hear about people's problems all day.
Tedium is part of life. No matter what you do, really, there's going to be some aspect of it that's tedious. But, I guess it's acceptance that... acceptance on a lot of levels can give you... can help cultivate patience. I would definitely say you could look on patience as... for me, it would be something I list as a shortcoming. Now, I can see it's much more useful to think of it like that because I can see where I need to apply it, where I'm impatient for a result sometimes on a personal level.
It's interesting because the then there's the flip side as well, where patience can lead to issues of where it can get into the territory of procrastination. And it's interesting because synonyms like for the word that I was looking up was, one of them was submissiveness and sufferance. And so people can be like maybe thinking, oh, I'm being patient, but really they're submitting to a situation that they could improve if they took more action or applied themselves, but they could justify that by saying that they're being patient. So it's kind of, yeah, maybe it is a misdescription, but it's interesting that there is that association with these other less fruitful ways of being.
Well, you could certainly use patience as an excuse in your own mind for doing a host of other things, like a fear of swift action. You could tell yourself you're being patient, where in fact you're just fearful of doing something in a certain situation, whether that's about confronting people or doing something that you're fearful or you just don't like doing. Yes, and it can be seen as passivity to other people. Patient people who don't make a lot of noise and don't feel the need to get up and bang their chest can often be disregarded and ignored by a lot of people who make a lot of noise.
That's right, and the noisemakers are able to generate more attention towards their agendas, whereas the person that's not speaking up can be underserved. So,
yes, now a danger in exercising too much patience in your life would be that you're wasting your life away waiting for things to happen.
oh, interesting.
So it can be a waste of time being patient, avoiding swift action sometimes, pushing for a result somewhere is not always a bad thing. You can spend your life waiting for other people or situations to materialise. So it can be a source of procrastination for us. Living in the age we live in, the age of short-term memory loss and instant gratification, where just about everything you want is,
A click away.
click of a mouse button.
Yeah, in the 70s, there was this notion of Future Shock, which was a book by Alvin Toffler, 1970 book, but essentially it put forth the idea that modern society and technology is advancing so quickly that people's brains aren't going to be able to cope with it, and it's eventually just going to drive everyone insane.
They called this phenomena the spike. They come up with this term, the spike. Now, this idea is popularised by people like Ray Kurzweil. Don't know whether you heard of him. He's a software engineer, and he developed the first digital keyboard for Stevie Wonder in the 70s. He also developed the language recognition software for Microsoft. So he's a very clever guy, and he's written all his books predicting the future. And one of the things that he talked about is an event, they call it an event horizon, which is a thing that sits at the edge of a black hole. There's another rabbit hole. But it's basically a point past which you go, weird things happen. Stepping over the edge, so to speak. And the event horizon with technology, this spike, is what you were just talking about. It's where you come to a point where beyond that point, the world you're in now ceases to make any sense or be relevant. So it's almost impossible to put your mind into that future but on the other side of the spike.
Well, think about it if someone time traveled from, the Dark Ages or even to 200 years ago, and then it would look very demonic, like this world with these, mobile phones, and it would look like it's these little phantoms inside boxes telling us what to do. And
it would be, I mean, your head'd blow up. Basically, there'd just be so much magic everywhere that you wouldn't be able to, it'd be like Catweasel.
Yeah.
Another TV character from the 70s who travelled through time after I think they tried to drown him, thought he was a witch, and they threw him in a pond, and he popped out in the 20th century.
And so does this event horizon idea, does this tie into the singularity?
That's another word that they use for this point that we're going to reach, the singularity. We can't see on the other side of it, and once you get there, everything's going to change so much that this is a fantasy to me. They've been predicting this with our technology
for a long time.
What they've been saying is going to happen is that there'll be a point in time where our technology and our physical being merge to a point where people with the augmentations will not be able to meaningfully communicate with people who don't have the augmentations. And what they're talking about is stuff like being able to get RAM inserted in your head with the Encyclopedia Britannica on instant recall, that kind of idea.
It's funny how like these ideas promote the intelligence of these technologies, but when you look at like what it's done to people's brains, like especially young people, it's more of like, certainly from a social perspective, it's more of a retarding of people from my point of view. I mean, sure, we've got this like wealth of information, but you've also got a generation of young people that don't know how to talk to each other, let alone adults or
I see the
like
result
that.
of our technology so far.
Yeah,
The phones. Well, I mean, this spike is when they're talking about the phone becomes part of your body.
you,
Yeah, which is a stupidity.
Yes, it is.
Because they've never been able to connect an electrical wire with any great result to the human body.
Yeah.
And you might say, oh, no, no, they don't. You know, they stimulate bone growth with the right kind of frequency of and current.
And even if like such a thing could be real, I don't see there being the infrastructure or like the economic capacity to promote such a thing.
Well, the world as is now wouldn't exist. It would be wouldn't be necessary. If you could augment your brain power in that way, augment computer. There's a fallacy that there's any way to make a computer an intelligent, conscious device. Is something that gets talked about endlessly, the intelligent AI and stuff like that. But from my perspective, these things are just automation. They don't contain any intelligence as we understand it. And that's why we're a long way from any spike or event horizon, I suspect, person. Just me.
I'm currently using a phone that's coming up for 9 years old, and in the intervening, it's a 2014 model, the Samsung Galaxy J2 Pro, and in the intervening years, the technology has increased so much that when I will use someone else's phone to do something, I'll be struck by how remarkably quick it is. And such, as we were saying before, such a pipeline towards instantaneousness, does that result in more impatience? Well, I would say, of course it does. And when you look at, because I remember during COVID was when they started putting those reels on YouTube, or at least when I noticed them. And I think because of all the stress of the lockdown and staying with my family and everything, and just what was going on in society at that point, I was just like blowing out my dopamine receptors with these little reels and stuff. And it also gave me a horrifying insight into what's really popular and what the people want. It's actually kind of gone backwards in terms of the technology because, you know, with those shorts, you can't like wind it back like you can with YouTube videos. It has to just repeat, you know? Whereas with YouTube videos, it'd be like, it doesn't matter how short it was, you can still skip back and forth.
Yeah,
but
no, they're setting these platforms up like that quite deliberately. Yeah, that's very irritating when you can only play a video and you can't like stop it and move forward and back.
Yeah,
I don't listen to those shorts. They drive me crazy.
No, but I think they're really bad for your brain. And there's an expression, they call it doom scrolling. And it's funny because all of the different apps like Instagram, YouTube, even Facebook, they all have these reels because they're trying to destroy people's attention spans and people's dopamine. From my point of view, I think it's a form of psychological warfare, like very purposefully. It would make sense to me if this kind of thing was damaging the ability for young people, say if they're growing up with this kind of thing, to cultivate the patience to read a novel, say something like that, you know, something that requires a delayed gratification and a concerted investment of time.
Yeah, maybe if that's all they had. Yeah, I definitely see what you're saying. I guess the antidote is books. Give your child books as well as a phone. This is why, you know, parents need to be responsible about these new kind of things that they need to watch out about, like how much their kids time their kids spend on online, and you know, with their head in front of a phone, staring at a phone all day long.
Yeah.
You know, but you can only get certain kinds of action from a phone. You certainly take pictures. It's the whole taking of pictures is a whole new world compared to when I was a kid. When I was a kid, you had to go and buy a camera
And film.
that had film in it, and you'd take your pictures, and then you'd think very carefully about every picture you took. You couldn't look at it after you took it. You couldn't do any of that. You got one go. You took the picture. You filled the camera up. You went to the camera shop and you got them to develop it, and then you come back in a few days and get your pictures. It was a long drawn out process to get a photo, to take a picture.
Once again, the delayed gratification, and even, you know, the old computers, and they'd take so long to boot up, or back with like dial-up, you'd have to, you know, it was a kind of a process to turn it on. And
well, you know, it's kind of good in one way and bad in another way. Like, it's great to be able to take pictures and review them and take thousands of pictures and all this kind of thing. But what you'll notice is that people don't have pictures anymore. Family photos, snaps and stuff. Why is that? One of the reasons is because those pictures stay on your phone. It's not that easy to get that thing into a... Most people don't even bother printing. Like, they'll show you the picture on the phone.
Exactly.
It's all about the phone.
yeah, but there's
no photo albums anymore.
That's
for
right.
Snaps, you know.
And it takes away the significance because it's such an oversaturated market of everything now. It kind of reminds me of that Bruce Springsteen song. Have you ever heard it? The 57 channels and nothing on. And, you know, it's like sometimes I'm sure you get this as well, John, where you'll go online and you think, gee, I have access to all these, you know, movies and videos and essays, but it's like overwhelming, and sometimes it seems like there's nothing.
Yeah, that happens to me at times. Not that often, because, you know, there's just so much there.
Yeah.
But we all have our own particular little tunnel vision into the internet world. And this is very noticeable if you look at somebody's social media platform that they use a lot, it kind of gets formed to that person's likes and dislikes. Like YouTube watches you all the time. It looks at same with Google, like the kind of things you search for, the kind of stuff you watch, and it feeds you that stuff. And it's really interesting. Like I've set up channels on YouTube that are in completely different names, like anonymous accounts, just to see what kind of stuff I'll get fed and what is the result of me looking at different things. It's really quite amazing. I'm really comfortable with my little world that's got my actual personality attached to it. When I go to this other account, it's very frustrating because I can't seem to find anything I like. It's just I seem to be bombarded with stuff I'm not interested in or that I don't want to watch.
Well, I remember during that COVID time as well, I had a look at TikTok, and I didn't create an account. So it didn't have any kind of profile of me, and I hadn't used it, so it was just feeding me the most popular stuff. And this is what I meant when I was saying it's kind of bad to see what is most popular, because it is these, like, a lot of these shorts are like these videos of these, you know, scantily clad women, like, dancing around with, like, these kind of voluptuous tattooed bodies, but, like, these, like, childlike faces. It's really weird and creepy, but apparently this is what the people want. This is the most popular shorts like on these platforms. So
it's amazing what passes for entertainment.
On a more positive note, I would say that patience is an important component of getting to know someone deeply and also maintaining that relationship as well. They say that familiarity breeds contempt, and certainly for like old married couples or family members or close friends, you get to know a person so well that at times it can wear on one's patience.
Oh, housemates.
Housemates, exactly. And when it comes into the neurodivergent types as well, there's often a need for patience to really get to know them, because especially like we'll say like people on the spectrum or something like that, there will be a tendency to for them to want to wax lyrical about idiosyncratic kind of things. But then if you can be patient about that, it can actually be very gratifying. So I think it's important for, all kinds of relationships. It's a key aspect.
It's a great thing to cultivate.
Absolutely.
To plant and nurture in your life. It seems to me something that you seem to acquire as you get older and perhaps a little wiser. You perhaps maybe can become a little bit more patient. The impatience of youth is a real thing. It's wonderful because what it gives us is swift action. You know, young athletes, they're very fast, they're very quick to act. But, you know, with age comes the wisdom of taking your time and measuring your responses. We hope you've been patient enough to get through this.
We hope that you can find the patience in your life when you need it.
Yeah, because as we've pointed out, it's a great thing to have some of. You know, watch out for it. Like most of our words, they can be twisted around. We can gaslight ourselves. A worthy concept, a worthwhile pursuit, you may circumvent some suffering.
We hope you have a good week, and we'll be back same time next week.
Arrivederci.
Au revoir, bonsoir.
listening to People Powered Radio, proudly supported by the Community Broadcasting Foundation. The Community Broadcasting Foundation resources community-owned and operated media stations just like this one that connect people and tell vital, local stories so that we all enjoy a more vibrant, inclusive Australian culture and healthy democracy. Find out more about our work at cbf.com.au.